In Bosnia and Herzegovina, at the end of the war, you had efforts to establish the fate of the missing undertaken by the different parties to the conflict. And very often what they were trying to do was to find their own. It's impossible to do that. You cannot undertake a successful search for missing persons if you're trying to limit your effort to one particular group, whether it's based on religion or ethnicity. Finding the missing is something that has to be done in a systematic and scientific way, and that precludes the possibility that you would only look for one group of people. So one of the things which ICMP was instrumental in doing was to establish an institution in Bosnia and Herzegovina which would bring all of the parties together. ICMP was established in 1996 at the end of the fighting in former Yugoslavia, and its mandate was to work with governments in the region to assist them in locating and identifying missing persons. When ICMP began using DNA at the end of the 1990s, the rate of identification was relatively small. Within a year, it shot up into several hundreds per year. The increase in the rate of identification was exponential. It was a huge increase. So ICMP is involved in providing technological help. In the case of Srebrenica, Prijedor, and other areas in Bosnia and Herzegovina where there were mass killings, the perpetrators set out to remove evidence of the crime, and they did this by using mechanical diggers to open up mass graves and remove the bodies wholesale and rebury them further from the killing site. When this was done, many of the bodies were separated, and some body parts would be taken to one tertiary grave or secondary grave, and the parts from the same body would be taken to another grave. This obviously made it enormously difficult to use conventional methods to identify bodies. And this was a case where DNA completely revolutionized the process, because it was possible to say this body part and this body part 50 kilometers apart belong to the same body. There were more than 40,000 people missing at the end of the conflict in former Yugoslavia, and more than 70% of that figure have been identified. So that's a significant rate of identification which hasn't been equaled anywhere else in the world. The search for the missing is based on, for example, the testimony of witnesses in domestic war crimes trials and also at the ICTY in The Hague. It's based on the testimony of neighbours. It's based on systematic archaeological excavation and investigation at likely sites where historically massacres are believed to have taken place. Identification is based on a system which was established here, which had not been established elsewhere, which involved inviting relatives who had a missing family member to come forward and give a blood sample, and the DNA from their blood sample was then stored in a computer program. When bodies were found, the DNA from the bodies was run through the program to see if there were any matches, and in this way it became possible to identify bodies which had been in the ground for 20 years. A couple of years ago there was a survey conducted among the general population which found that the vast majority of BiH citizens of Bosnia and Herzegovina, believe that identifying the missing is a fundamental and necessary element in post-war recovery and in post-war reconciliation. It's sometimes suggested that digging up the past, you somehow create problems for the present. The historical experience of Bosnia-Herzegovina has been entirely the opposite, that locating and identifying the missing has been a way of addressing the past